You ever stop and think about this wild situation we got going on? It's like a head scratcher, a head shaker, and yeah, it can get you all riled up too. I'm talking about what's up with the United Nations and their nod to the Zionist crew, and why Israel keeps giving international resolutions the cold shoulder. Let's break it down, shall we? Now, Israel, that piece of real estate wasn't born out of some historical right or justice-driven deal. Nope, it's the only place in history that came into being because the United Nations gave it the thumbs up. Crazy, right? And that's just the start of it. See, when it comes to folks trying to slap international sanctions and whatnot on Israel, those guys have some sort of special pass or something. They're like the champs when it comes to getting vetoes to squash those resolutions. You'd think they'd have a room full of trophies for it. So when we're talking about the United Nations rolling over for the Zionists, and we're scratching our heads at Israel flipping off international rules left and right, there's a backstory we need to know. It's all tied to the United Nations being born out of the League of Nations, basically set up to help Israel do its thing, even if it meant swiping Arab rights, especially the Palestinians' rights. Yeah, you heard me right. And here's the kicker. They want us to buy into this idea that every single country out there should aim to keep global public opinion in check and not step on any toes. But here's the deal. That only works if you're willing to bend over backward, kowtow, and kiss up to Israel and the big shot's colonial interests. So let's keep our eyes wide open and not fall for the okey-doke they're trying to sell. There's more to this game than meets the eye, my friends. Stay woke, stay sharp, and don't let anyone pull the wool over your eyes. The Palestinian predicament kicked off its global groove when the League of Nations strutted onto the scene. It was back on July 6, 1921, when they dropped the bombshell known as the Mandate for Palestine. This was like handing the keys to a wild house party, giving the British government the green light to carve out a Jewish homeland right in the middle of the Arab world, and they had a free pass to do whatever they pleased, from breaking moral codes to shattering humanitarian principles and breaking all sorts of laws. It was basically a license for some grand-scale mischief, all in the name of creating a Jewish homeland on what was undeniably Palestinian, Arab, and Islamic land. We've got the lowdown, the juicy scoop, and it's a tale that'll blow your mind. So here's the skinny: this whole shebang was cooked up by a bunch of cats. But the real masterminds were some heavy hitters. We're talking Rothschild and Weizmann, you know, the big brains behind this gig. Now let's rap about the Balfour Declaration. It's like a blueprint, but not the friendly kind. It's got 28 sections, and it's all about staking a claim for the Jewish crew, right there in good old Palestine. And man, did they drop Jews a ton in there. It's like they had a quota. Meanwhile, the Arabs, Muslims, and Christians, they're just hanging on the sidelines in this tale. Not a word for them, not an ounce of recognition. Now here's the twist. They tossed in the term other sects, but trust me, that's where the plot thickens. It's like the League of Nations was all in on the Zionist movement. They made it look like they were partners in crime, smuggling a whole new gang into fresh territory. The loss of Palestinian rights. It's a tale as old as time, and when we start pondering how the global players have turned a blind eye to the rights of the Palestinian people, it's like looking into the rabbit hole. Now let me tell you, back in the day when they were drafting the Mandate instrument, there wasn't a single word in there about the rights of the real owners of the land, the Palestinians. It's like they were ghosted or something. You know what's even crazier? It was all because the big shots at the time were mostly Jews. Take Hassa, for example, a Jew. And he was the big shot Minister of Foreign Affairs for Germany and a die-hard Zionist. Scheiger was calling the shots as the Minister of Finance, and guess what? He was also a Zionist, and don't get me started on Bruce, the Minister of the Interior, another card-carrying Zionist. Now Prussia, yep, you guessed it, all its ministers were Jews. And you know who ruled Bulgaria? Kurt Ester, the Jew. Even Hungary had its fair share of Zionist leadership, like Bela Cohen. They were practically everywhere. Let's talk Austria, same deal. Plus, the German delegation to the peace conference was packed with Zionists like Oscar Opthus and Marx Warburg. It was like a Zionist party, and they had the keys to the city. But you know what's really wild? It's the story of the Mandate and the League of Nations, the big brother of the United Nations. They're all about fretting over the water level of some river in Syria. But when it comes to Palestinian kids getting bombed by Israeli missiles and chased around by F-16 fighter jets, they act like it's just another day at the office. So here's the scoop. The Arabs kind of dropped the ball. They were too afraid to cross the Jews' line, especially when it came to resistance. The Jews had this thing where they labeled it terrorism, and the Arabs bought into it. Oh, and don't get me started on how they made refusing occupation and injustice seem like a bad thing, all while thinking public opinion was on their side. But here's the kicker. Are these standards set in stone? Are we forever bound by international legitimacy, which, let's be real, was heavily influenced by the Jewish folks? Do we keep living under the illusion that they created, where we beg for the world's approval even if it means sacrificing our religious and national rights? Here's the truth. Our religion, morals, and laws don't allow us to stay silent or give up even an inch of our homeland. So, are we going to keep dancing to the tune they composed for us? Or will we finally break free from these chains? All signs point to a new generation rising through the blessed intifada, and they're showing the world that one day things will change. The myth of public opinion created by the Zionist movement won't rule the roost forever. It'll have to learn to coexist with our national and religious rights. We're on a path to reclaim what's rightfully ours, and we won't back down. Stay tuned for the revolution, folks. It's coming, and it's long overdue. Peace.